Hello, community ed coaches. This is to overview the next set of the lesson plan for our classes, and we have had a switch in the lesson plan for warm-up, so I'm going to start there. And you can tell I'm in the vault area, and I chose to place these few Velcro items out as an example of how you could use those during class. If you're rushing and you just need to spread your class out, that's fine too, but then we cannot get frustrated with them when we say to spread out and they stand where we don't want them to stand or too close to their neighbor. And we just need to be patient, understand that they can't see that they're clumped together on one end and spread out too far on the other end. We're the only people who can see that. They can't see, they can't tell, and they don't care. And half the time they don't understand our instructions on how to correct that. And they are used to standing really close to their classmates all day long. And they don't understand at gymnastics why we want them to be so far apart from one another. So if I were teaching class, I would make sure that I had these so that I didn't start off getting impatient. And then the entire warm-up in the vault area is to stay in that same spot and not move. And just make sure that you're making good calls of, like, for example, if they were like this and they needed to straddle, then I would say, make sure you point your tummy at the foam pit, or make sure you point your tummy at the wall that's closer to you. Because you know that if they face towards me right now, then their legs are going to go off the sides. So just make sure you're giving clear, quick instructions about how to use their space, and reach out if you have any questions about the things that are specifically in the lesson plan for the vault area. This is the warm-up that's labeled the edge of floor warm-ups. I'm pretending I'm a student right now waiting for my turn on the blue line. You said, come out, line up. Then you're going to keep your feet on this line facing towards the floor. Then when it's your turn, go around this cone, go all the way to the cone, around it, and on the line on the way back. So kind of similar format to what we did for the vault runway last time, but moving it to the floor so we can do some more bouncing on the floor and some different passes. And then it ends with them just spreading out along here so you can move the cones out of the way. And just make sure they're not too close to the line on the edge of the floor for that. And please reach out if you have any more questions about what's in that warm-up. Then moving over here is the one that's changed the most of these. So this is where we'd have kids line up. You can say, you three go behind the orange dot. You guys go behind the red one. You guys go behind the purple one. They make sure they stay here while their friend pushes their mat towards the orange one, walks around it, pushes the mat back to right here, and then they go to the end of the line. 5 and 6, do not talk about forward rolling over the mat. Just have them walk around it, push it back. 7 and 8, it will be split. So just tell them about rolling over the mat and say, if you want to try your forward roll over the mat, go ahead. But you can just walk around it too, and that's fine. And then in intermediate and advanced, ask them to be jumping from the floor and rolling over. I decided to do an orange and an orange because sometimes kids are pushing the mat crooked and they don't realize it. So then you can say, you're on the orange one, push your mat towards the orange one. And then I also chose to use this kind of middle part of the floor, so no kids are waiting in line off the floor, no kids can fall off the edge of the floor, and they have a clear place to stop their mat. So you can say, when your mat touches the blue line, or when your mat gets to the orange cone. Of course, that won't always go perfect, but if you don't give those instructions, kids will stop anywhere they feel like it. So give those clear boundaries, and that will help it go a little bit better. And then after they push the mat 3 to 5 times, you have to spread out across the floor and sit down. So that's where I don't know if you have enough space to do a circle or if you want to go in a line just like the other floor warm-up is, but you will need to do some, like, maybe move this panel mat over then and spread out in between the orange dots. So just make sure you think that through before you start. And currently, I also do not have the sting mat on the floor that's required for intermediate class. So that sting mat might need to kind of stay, like, either we move these stations closer together and it can fit over here, or you move it off to the side, and after warm-up's over, you can drag that sting mat out to the middle of the floor so you have more space, and then drag it back. I guess that's all I needed to say about that warm-up. I thought I had one more important thing. If I remember it, I'll let you know. Starting off in the vault area, this station actually did not change from the last part of the lesson plan. because it's kind of straightforward. It's the part where they're actually doing their vault. So they should get lots of chances to practice that. And I chose to put nothing in front of the resi just to drill in the point that each age group is different. So the age 5-6, they want mini tramp, 2 panel mats, so a clear place to run from, and they're doing pop-up. Then the 7-8 is a pop-up again, but removing those panel mats so they can learn where to run and jump from. And then the intermediate is a longer run with no panel mats, doing their handstand flat back. So make sure you know before you start which your class is doing and that you have mats prepared for those. And then over here is a new station for kind of the strength and details of vault. So here off this mat, they're doing a tight arch hold. So that's where they would start laying flat on their back, hands flat on the ground, their feet go up on the mat, and then they push their hips up in the air. And make sure they're taking their time to get their body tight and their body straight and really hold that one. And then here's where they'll wait and switch with their friend. This is like a dual station where they're gonna do 10 rebounders on the springboard, holding a pit block above their head. And one of the things you wanna try to get across is that parallel of tight legs here and tight legs there. And so if you can practice it both places, that will make you better at the other one and more ready for vault. And I also like to explain to kids on a tight arch, those muscles on the back of your legs are the ones that help you kick really fast up to a handstand. And that kind of leads us to our next station, which is donkey kick, where they're waiting here and their hands go on the mat. And then they're practicing that heel drive up. So I think it is important to teach kids what we're trying to teach them, which is using those muscles on the back of their legs to get to a handstand, especially because the intermediates then are doing it here. They're practicing it tight arch there, and they're trying to drive them to a handstand. And it's shocking how many connections kids can make if you introduce it to them. Of course, not everyone will, but they definitely can't if you don't try to teach them. So make them think about on this one, what their legs felt like on their tight arch, straight and together, should also be happening here. And then this is wall walk to handstand, kick to flat back. And the important part you want to know is we're not walking in. So this mat might need to move depending upon the size of your class, but their hands start here and their feet stay here. So they're kind of like, you know, in a rainbow position, holding a tight handstand. And then it should go 1 foot to handstand, other foot to handstand, and then a tight fall. So there's really so much to coach there. So try not to let that go, just monitored. When they're in that wall handstand, try to get them to engage all their muscles, squeeze their butt cheeks together, have their big toes side by side. Can they look up and see their feet? Are their shoulders touching their ears? Then in the handstand, all of those same things. Then when they fall on their back, can you grab their legs and try to wiggle them apart and explain, there's those tight legs again from your tight arch that you practiced today. That's what you want your legs to feel like when you land, but also right there, but also right there. So try to get those things connected in their mind for those kids. Moving over to the bars area, there is a station that goes into the pit here. So anytime that we're getting ready for class and there's bars, we are gonna have to move these mats. So that might be something, anybody who is involved with a high school team, can you have the high schoolers help do that before they leave so the coaches can worry about the other stuff? And these mats do not have homes, but we are not dismounting off the end of beam 7 this time. So these both can get stacked over there on top. Eventually the one with the rip of these is going to go underneath that mat. So maybe Lanny and Teresa, whenever you can get your team having a day where they have time to put it under there so that's a little more solid underneath, and then that one could stay on the top to tumble onto or move back and forth. But for the bar station over here, the equipment needed is a little panel mat. For age 5-6, they're practicing a tuck jump in. So we hope that their body's able to do that. And I know it seems like an easy thing, but we need to make sure kids are having the opportunity to learn, what is a tuck? How do I do it? When a coach says tuck jump, can I remember on my own what that is and still do it? Another thing you could offer to your class for 5-6 is you could let them tuck jump in, crawl across, and then come out. Or even crawl across and then come back. And you want to be giving clear guidelines about if they should crawl out right. by a dot right here, if they should call it there, if they go across and come back. But I don't think a bunch of crummy turns are very helpful. So maybe if they do less tuck jumps, but then are working on the muscles and the endurance to get across the pit, that can add something to your class. We just want to make sure that they're not jumping on each other and that they're learning guidelines near the pit. Then over here is where we're doing a tuck hang for age 5, 6, and then doing tuck ups for the older groups. Sorry, I wanted to back up so this is a little better. I think this would probably be the right setting for the age 7 and up class. 5, 6, I think it should go down one more than this. The 5, 6s, we're just trying to hang still in that tuck position. And 7s and older, we're trying to teach them to straighten their feet and point them at the ground, then pull their knees all the way up to touch their chest, and then learning how to safely drop off of a bar that's a little bit above their head. This panel mat lives here to cover the crack, and that is the safest thing for them to land on if you can get the bar set right, because if these mats get on top of 8 inches and 4 inches, the mounting mats get a little bit wiggly, and that gets a little bit scary. And you're gonna have to figure out what fits for your class for these. This is squishy, so I brought it because I think that makes it safer. And a lot of kids might be able to mount right from this, but then some might not be able to reach the bar. So I thought if they could use that to get on there, then they could climb up there. But you'll have to keep an eye on it as a coach of your class and fix the problem if it's getting unsafe. And the other thing you want to be aware of is that if kids put their hands on this, it's going to spin and they're going to fall. So if you have issues with it, I would tape it still, just so that if a kid does touch it, that they are a little bit safer, but hopefully that won't become an issue. Then over here on set number 2, the 5, 6 class is not using this bar. The 7, 8 needs this blue block here. It's probably a little far away right now. They're gonna hang down low and then put their feet on it and lift up one foot to the bar and set it down, then the other foot to the bar and set it down. So that's called a single leg toe up. And then you're just gonna have to tell them, do you want them to go both leg, one leg, other leg 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? And then if you have a kid who really is strong enough to do a double leg toe up, you could have them go right leg, left leg, both legs. And that could help meet their needs a little bit better, but then teach those other kids who aren't strong enough how they could get there. And then for the intermediate, that's a running pullover. So that's why I did include this mat under here. I think this is a perfect setting probably for them, where you just move this block, pull the mat back, and then work on their pullover. And remember, pullovers take a long time for some kids, so that's why we're trying to get it as an opportunity all the time. And we do not allow kids to move into advanced unless they can do a pullover and almost or hopefully a back hip circle. And we also cannot allow anybody onto Excel team if they do not already have a pullover and likely also a back hip circle. So of course we would take into account if they've had the opportunity to try one or not. But if you're in a 7 or older class and you're unable to attempt those things or really close or make those things, then they're probably not a candidate. So make sure that they're getting the chance to try those things so we know how often they've tried them and how close they are, or if they can do those things. Then over here, everybody's doing this push-up shape and hold for 5 seconds. We know kids in class struggle with holding these positions and thinking this is fun, but that's part of gymnastics. If they don't practice it, they won't get better at it, both the skill and holding still in static positions when they need to. So please celebrate this one. If a kid holds still for a whole 5 seconds, make a big deal out of it. If a kid's really good at it, make a big deal out of it. Kids know when you're coaching them and when you're not. And if you just go, oh, I don't have to talk about that one because at least it's safe, then they won't keep trying at it. So please, please, please compliment kids who are trying really hard at this one and who are really good at it, because that's what we need to build stronger bars. Then over here, this bar only needs to be out if you have a 5-6 class. So please move it if you're using this bar instead of this bar so that kids aren't messing around on it or tripping over it. But the skill that we're working on this bar and this bar is jump to front support, 3 casts, and forward roll to bent arm hang. And this is the more appropriate safety setting for a 5-6-year-old to be doing that, in case you can't be standing right there to help them. And this is where we're hoping a 7 and older student would be able to do that, because hopefully they're getting close to learning their pullover and doing more things on that bar. So again, this is kind of one that goes a little bit uncoached. You go, okay, that looks safe, good enough for me. But please teach them about things like straight elbows while they're doing it, about their leg form, and forward rolling with their arms bent. Remember, that's a pullover, but in reverse. So it's working on all the muscles of a pullover. And so we want them to value that as a skill, not just as a way to flop off the bar. And if they roll forwards with their hands in the wrong place, or flopping down, especially off a bar this high, that can be dangerous. So please just make sure that you're trying to coach the details at this and make the kids care about the details of it, because they might not understand why that's important. Okay, moving over to the beam section. This is where we're using a bar in the beam section so they can get some extra time hanging on their hands. Remember, the reason we chose to put that in the lesson plan where they touch a bar every week is because kids are absent and class is a little bit scattered through the school year. And so we don't want them to go, 3 weeks or more without holding on to a bar, because that makes bar skills even harder to get. So here we're practicing their monkey walk. And this was set specifically for this station last night, and I think it went great. So you can see kind of where that bar is set in relation to the Alfong blocks. The Alfong blocks are kind of close. They're not needed for this station, but I did think it made the kids do it a little safer, because they couldn't have crazy legs and swing front to back because they would have hit the wall. So we didn't plan that, I don't think, Lanny, but I do think that it was a little bit safer. And then if you can see this mat that's here, Violet and Liliana had it under there for the age 5-6 class, and then they just pulled it back for the intermediate class. So we'll have to find the right balance for each age, how that's safe but also challenging. And then please remember the ways you can challenge on a monkey walk. So if their legs get to be straight to the ground, that's great that they're practicing that long hang. Are they straight? Are they glued together? Then you could get them to face the other way, so they're leading with the other hand. Then you could ask them to do it with their legs in a tuck or an L position if they need a little bit more of a core challenge. But again, simply time hanging on the bar is making their hands stronger. And we can tell then if kids are controlled, careful, listening to directions by how they act on that one. So again, cheer for them when they're doing well at it. Then moving over to the medium beam, please make sure before you start that there's a mounting mat ready, so that they're not only learning to crawl up with their feet and the legs here. Remember, we want them to be going straddle, sit, swing to squat. And when they put a foot in there, they don't do that. Usually they walk their other foot up then like a ladder, and they're skipping that part. Then there's the 3 shoelaces for learning to do their arabesque. Remember, we are attempting to do that with hands on our hips, with both knees straight, and try to do it on one leg, other leg, and then your favorite leg. But as good as you can is as good as you can. We also know that sometimes we do arabesques with our bottom leg bent, like when we land a leap, but we're practicing it with our legs straight, more like a standing hold rather than a landing for a leap. And then please watch this mat. Like, I just pulled it like 20 inches this way because it slides that way so much. So as long as you put the dot on the side where there's more mat. It's not too big of a deal, but if you can help me keep closing this gap and keeping it this way, then the kids can be jumping and waiting towards you so you can see them hopefully a little bit better. And then reminder, if you're spotting on this one, the goal is to try to spot from the other side so you can still see all the other stations. And I know it's challenging to walk around and it doesn't always work that way, but if you're spotting right here, it means you're helping one, maybe two kids, and your back is to every other kid. So do your best to walk around if you're having to stay there for extended amounts of time. And then here is the setup for the laser beam. The 5-6 class is going to do a teeter-totter right here and then go to the red dot and do a partial kick to handstand. This teeter-totter, they should also have a pit block in their hands. I think that helps for two main things. Their hands don't have to go all the way down to the beam then, so they can control themselves a little bit easier because their hands are a little more raised. And I also think it's easier for coaches then to see in their start position, is their pit block above their head or is it reaching forwards already? So make sure that that's straight up and down when they start. And then for the 7/8, they're gonna do a full kick to handstand, a full kick to handstand. And then for the intermediates, they don't need any of the dots or panel mats and they get to keep practicing their cartwheel. Then when you head over to the beam 7, the next one over, we're doing jumps next to each of the dots. And like I said, we don't need to jump in the pit for this time. And next to each jump, it's a straight jump for 5-6, a tuck jump for 7-8, and then a split jump for intermediate. Obviously, if you've been coached at gymnastics, you know there's lots of things to learn about a jump, but I think number one is being bold. So letting them jump like as high as they can and working on that. Because if they're not really willing to jump off the beam, it's hard to tell them to squeeze their legs straight or to point their toes or to work on how their feet are landing because they didn't even really leave the beam. So coach for boldness first. Get them to go big. Ask them to get their feet far away from the beam. You could maybe even have them like walk over and try it on the carpet once and then go up and try it on the beam. Might be a tactic I would use because most of them, like, it's not in our class lesson plan right now to do a tuck jump on the floor. It's only into the pit, or they might not have tried it on the ground. So you could teach them about the jump on the ground and be having them do it on the beam. And that might be a great way to get them progressing at it, not just doing the same mistake over and over again on the beam. Next, moving to the floor area, we're still including this medium beam in that. Please make sure, again, that there's a mounting mat ready for the kids. And I placed it halfway just as a reminder that for 5-6s, you can have them only go halfway if they're really struggling with that so that they could mount the beam and dismount the beam at least twice instead of only getting to it once and being less confident all the way across. For dip walk, it's hands on your hips and, you know, kind of where you dip your toe down or you scoop it next to the beam. So one, that's quad strength and single leg balancing for them. So they don't have things in their life where they work on the strength of their quads other than running and jumping in class or at Phi-Ed. So this is kind of like a single leg dip. Can their leg bend them down? A lot of kids aren't very good at balancing on one leg. So this is a chance for them to stand on one foot. The next piece is their foot facing forwards on the beam? So that is something you can coach for. If kids are turning their feet in, you can teach them how they face forwards and why that's important. And then the leg that's next to the beam is supposed to be all the way straight and all the way pointed. So how many times do kids go to releve walk and we're frustrated that their knees are bent? This is a chance for them to work on, can they straighten that leg all the way when they're not standing on it? Would be very helpful for them to be able to do before they have to be standing on it. And then it's hard then to squeeze one, squeeze the other one, squeeze one, squeeze the other one. So I think this is something that coaches look at and they go, okay, cool, almost like a throwaway. And it's not. You can coach any single thing they're doing across the beam and try to make them better at it. So when in doubt, talk to them about those things and see if you can get them to improve at it. And then just try not to get frustrated if they don't want to be that detailed, or if they don't quite understand you. The coaches, the other kids in class, the parents, they see the effort. They see you trying. But if you don't try, then they probably won't get better at it by accident. They're not going to like mysteriously try to do a dip walk better than they've done one before. The next station here is kick to handstand. So we're using this piano mat and this as the wall. Obviously, some of the taller kids, their feet will go above the wall. We expect that, and it's totally fine. And we need to tell them that that's normal, because sometimes tall kids look at that and they go, oh no, my feet are, and it's like, yeah, yep, sure, that's fine. And then this is probably the thing that I use the most with our team for reaching into handstands, is they put their feet on the carpet and touch their toes to the mat, then put their favorite foot on the mat, and then reach their hands towards the wall. And again, I think it's hard to tell kids where to put their hands, because they usually put them too far or too close. And we as coaches sometimes for that age don't know what to tell them. So if you need to draw a line, you could, or put a tape line, but it's just not perfect for every kid either. They're a little bit different. So if you go too close to the wall, then it's impossible to hold it. They like bounce off the wall. And then if you go too far from the wall, it turns into almost like the beginning of a bridge, or they're arching over. So if they get the wrong spot, try to have them come down right away and say, could you put them just a little closer than that, or a little further, and let them try again right away. And also note that initiating a kick to handstand for some kids is a real challenge, and it's okay for them to not touch the wall. They do not need to get their feet like all the way up there right away. You could even use this as a teeter-totter then. And I think kids like kick up too fast, they bounce off the wall and look at you like, I can't do it, and then they freak out. So if you could show them, then stand next to them, okay, try like me, and show them a teeter-totter. And then show them a teeter-totter where you jump a little bit. And then show them a kick to handstand where you don't touch the wall at all, and go, that's still practicing a handstand. That's okay. And make the station fit for everybody. The problem is a lot of times at the younger ages, especially like the 5-6 class, we shy away from the station because so many kids can't do it. But some kids can do it, or could learn to do it. So we need to teach them the things I already said, the modifications, to try it on their own, and be willing to spot them on it. And then maybe after we're done spotting one or two, say, okay, I'm going to go check on my friends over at the trampoline now. But remember, you can do your jump and teeter-totter instead of trying to touch your feet to the wall. And so it's more about trying to find the opportunity for kids to learn it, even if they aren't able to do it yet. Then this next station for age 5-6, the blue and yellow mats are not actually needed. They're going to start on the mat and do their forward roll. And then for 7-8, it switches to my feet start here and my hands are above me, and jump to a forward roll. And then past that, they would start standing here, jump to there, and forward roll. So I think this is kind of a dual station, a little bit kind of moving towards vault, but also moving towards a punch front tuck someday. And that's where you can kind of turn it into, like the advanced class says, to move this panel mat out so they can punch the floor and it's a little bit higher, and start thinking about a front tuck. I think sometimes the station of forward roll gets a little uncoached, and like, I don't know why we're doing this again, but kids only get good at stuff when they repeat it over and over again. And so we need to find a way now maybe to teach them, like, see, this is what you could do when you do a really good one, and give them a chance to learn it in a different way too, not just standing still. But then of course, like when we compete bronze, we compete straight stand, forward roll, straight stand, and they need to be able to do that well too. When they're doing their rolls, I guess when it gets down to the bare minimum of it, is we want to make sure they know what a tuck is. We want to make sure that their knees are touching together, that their feet are side by side, that they know that it's just like a rock and roll that they practice in warm up, and that their chin is tucked down and that they're looking at their belly button. So don't let kids get away with that standing up 1 foot at a time, the crisscross applesauce, the number 4 with their legs where one tucks under the other one. Like, we want to slow them down, stop them, no matter which stage they're at of this, and make sure that they're learning those things at our classes. And then over on tramp, they're waiting on the blue dot and then keeping their tummy pointing. Like what I would try to do is say, keep your belly button facing the green stripe. The only thing that stinks about that then is that you can't see their split degree from other places very good. So if you want them to turn the other way, then I would maybe put that panel mat at the end so that they don't fall off the end. And all the age groups are working on their split jump. So try to tell them that's their favorite foot should go in front, the same one they use on their kick to handstand on the other station. A lot of kids switch back and forth, and we want them to be trying to do their favorite one as big as they can. Please keep in mind that we have this session, then one more session during high school season, and then it's the month of March, and I'm coming to classes every single week and monitoring for which kids need to be moved up, which kids need to go to preteen for the summer, which kids might get invited to excel. And our class program, although it's not skills based and we do not do testings and move ups, every single thing they're doing here is something that Lanny and I would want to see from a kid. Like, how do they do that? How are they coached at that? If they've tried it before, did they get better at it? Did they like doing all of those things? So we really are using our entire class lesson plan is a test for the next level. Could we move a 7-year-old up to intermediate who is not going to be on team but wants to be in that longer advanced class and learning more about gymnastics? So please take this stuff serious and try to teach it, because these truly are our next pre-teamers, our next bronzes, our next advanced class. And we want the kids in our program to be getting a positive, well-rounded, full experience, no matter which set of classes that they're in, no matter which teacher that they have. So please go at it with that same attitude that you would if you were coaching the high school team. Is we want them to be getting the most for their money, the most for their time, their most of for their experience, and making them fall in love with gymnastics. So please do your best to be giving them that chance when they're here.